Hello everyone. So until a couple of years ago, I really never tried to wear red lipsticks at all. And I tended to be favoring a much more natural makeup look during those times. And I also often wasn't really wearing very much makeup at all. And so whenever I did try on red lipstick, it always seemed like it was something that was really bright and that was giving me a look of being way too made up and something that didn't really seem like it was natural for me or that made me feel like myself. But more recently, I have become more interested in using makeup in order to help me to look a little bit younger as I have moved in toward my 60s. And I have started to think a little bit more about the idea of using makeup, and particularly red lipstick shades or reddish lipstick shades, in order to make myself look a little bit more on the youthful side. And I do think it's the case that for people that are getting a bit older, that red lipstick can bring a little bit of life to the face. And I also think that for people in general, if you have issues on your face like wrinkles or blemishes or age spots or anything like that, that red lipstick can be a focal point to draw attention away from those kinds of issues and towards your lips and to serve as kind of a distraction. And I think that that can be a positive thing too. And so as a result, I've been trying a little bit more in terms of trying out different shades of lipstick and different ways of applying lipsticks and other red lipstick products to see if I can get a lipstick look that is a reddish look that will draw attention away from some of those other issues, but that won't seem like it is really overdone to me. And I do think that that has been a little bit of a challenge for me. I do think that because I have skin that is quite fair and also that I tend to have fairly low contrast coloring, that it's a little bit more challenging for me to wear red lipstick than it is for a lot of other people who have either more high contrast coloring or who have darker skin than I do. And so I have experimented with an awfully lot of different kinds of lip products that have the potential of giving me the look of a red lipstick without being too bright or too saturated. And I've also tried a lot of other types of lip products like lip balms and lip oils to see if those would work for me, and also different techniques of applying products. And so what I thought that I would do in this video is to demonstrate a lot of the products that I have picked up and to let you know what they look like on me so that you can have a better idea of whether or not some of these might work for you or not work for you. And I do have very sensitive skin and sensitive lips, and so the products that I'm going to be talking about by and large are ones that have worked well for me and not been irritating, and so hopefully they will be able to be tolerated by many other people as well. And I did shoot all of this footage of all of these lip products in natural light, and so hopefully you will get a good sense of what they actually look like in the real world. And so first, a little bit of information about me. I am 60 years old and I do have dry and very sensitive skin, and I've never had any kind of cosmetic procedures like injections or surgery, and so I am not really intending to do that. And so I am hoping that the makeup and the skincare that I use can help me to look a little bit fresher and a little bit younger as I continue to get older. And one thing that I have found is that there are certain ingredients that always do irritate my sensitive skin. And I know that these ingredients tend to be very irritating for many other people as well. And so I just don't talk about products with those ingredients on this channel. So let's talk first about the issue of coloring. And I do think that it is much easier for some people to wear bright red lipstick than other people. And so I'm thinking especially about the example of a woman named Violette Serrat, who is the head of a company called Violette FR, which is now available at Sephora. And I did a video on this particular line just a couple of weeks ago. And so that really brought home to me the fact that she does look like red lipstick that she is selling is really easygoing on her, even when it is very bright and very saturated. And then when I put on those same colors of lipstick that look really easygoing on her, they do tend to be much, much more bright and much more attention-getting in terms of how they look on my own face. And I don't think it's necessarily bad for a lipstick to look really, really bright on me, and I think that especially for certain occasions that can be a good thing, occasions like evening wear or just to have a really fun pop of color, but they do tend to be a really bold look. And a really bold look is not something that I am looking for necessarily on an everyday basis. And I do also think it's the case that a lot of this is what you are used to. And so very recently I saw a new video from a woman named Erin Parsons who was talking about how popular red lipstick was during World War II and how it was actually seen as being sort of patriotic to be wearing red lipstick because I guess there was a sense that Hitler was opposed to the idea of women wearing red lipstick, and also just because it was seen as being cheerful and feminine when people were on edge. And I can kind of see that, and I actually think that that is probably why my grandmother started to wear red lipstick, because she was in her 30s during World War II, and then for her entire rest of her life, until she died when she was in her late 90s, she wore red lipstick every day. And I don't think that her coloring was really more well suited to wearing all that red lipstick than mine, but I think that she got used to wearing it, and then other people got used to seeing her in it, and it did look bright and cheerful on her. And so to some extent, I think if I were to wear red lipstick more often, that you do get used to it, and I think that that is one thing to keep in mind. But I also still feel like, even though I have been wearing red lipstick more often, that in a lot of cases it's still, if I'm wearing a really saturated red lipstick or a matte red lipstick with a really strong color to it, that does really seem too much for me. And so therefore trying to figure out ways to get the look of a red lipstick without it looking quite so bright has been something that has been a little bit of a challenge for me. Now, one thing that I have thought a little bit about is the concept of seasonal color analysis, and it is my feeling that I probably fit best into the color category of being a soft autumn, and that I also can kind of get away with wearing colors that are more like soft summer colors. But that in general, that I tend to do a little bit better most of the time with colors that are more on the muted side. And that is the case with clothing, and it's the case with makeup in general, including things like eye makeup and blush. And that seems to also be the case with lipstick as well. And it is not so much that I can't ever wear any of those colors, or that there aren't ways to make those colors work if I kind of fiddle with things a little bit. But I do think it's the case that if I stick more with the colors that are recommended as being for people that have soft autumn coloring or maybe soft summer coloring, that it is a little bit easier for me to wear those colors. And also that the looks that I get are more like on the harmonious side and less on the bold side. And again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to wear colors that are more on the bold side, or to wear colors that are more like a little bit on the contrasty side. But I think that in terms of creating a harmonious look that is kind of easygoing, I think that it is easier for me to stick with more muted colors. And so if I look at it in this way, then it is not really that much of a surprise that I might be having a little bit of a trouble when I go to wear lipsticks that are bright red, because if I look at the colors that are usually recommended for lipsticks for people who are soft autumn or soft summer, they really don't list any red lipsticks at all. But I also do think that in a lot of cases, lipsticks that are not actually bright red colors do look pretty red on me, just because the contrast between my otherwise muted skin coloring and the lipsticks themselves do make them look redder. And so that is something to think about as well. And I also have found that in some cases, lip tints or lip glosses that have just a very small amount of red coloring can look noticeably red on me and be plenty of color for me to be able to get across a red lipstick look. Now, a couple of other things that I do think make red lipsticks much more wearable for me. The first one is wearing glasses, and that I think is why I am able to get away with wearing, for instance, the red shirt that I have on now and the red lipstick that is coordinating with that, because I am wearing these darker glasses. And I think that the darker glasses add a little bit more of a contrast to my face, and that when I add that contrast through the glasses, that putting on a darker lipstick or a redder lipstick or a brighter lipstick in general is much more easygoing for me, and it creates kind of more of a balanced look. And so that is something that I do a lot in my videos, is that if I am wearing a lipstick that ordinarily would be way too bright for me, then I tend to demonstrate that with my glasses on. Now in this video footage, I am just demonstrating the lipsticks without my glasses on, and so that you can get a really good sense of how they look with my natural contrast. And then another thing that I think has made a fair amount of difference for me, even when I'm not wearing glasses, is to try to darken up my eyebrows. And so I do have eyebrows that tend to be quite light in color, and they're also fairly sparse. And so what I find is that rather than using a taupe shade of eyebrow pencil, if I am using something that is more like a medium brown, that this will allow me to get the look that is not really on the so dramatic side that it starts to look wrong, but that will change my look enough that I can wear a lipstick that is a little bit brighter and have it look not too imbalanced. Now the issue with that for me is that when I am wearing darker eyebrows and darker lipstick, that I tend to feel like I'm not really looking like myself. But of course, some people do that on purpose all the time, and eventually I think that they get used to it also. Now, in terms of other makeup, this is a little bit of a balancing act, because if you wear lipstick that is bright and then you also have a bright eye look, or you have a lot of blush on, then eventually you can start to look kind of clownish. And I think I'm more in line with the French girl type of aesthetic, where you either choose to emphasize your eyes or you choose to emphasize your lips, and you don't really focus on both of those. And I also feel like, for the most part, I like a blush that is not looking like it is too bright, regardless of what else is going on my face. But nonetheless, if I don't have any kind of eye makeup on at all, and then I put on a bright lip, then I do feel like that is really unbalanced, and that really all you're seeing is my lips. And so I do think that putting a little bit of eye makeup on in a way that doesn't really look like it is makeup, and that is just compensating for the fact that I do have really light lashes and I don't really have very much coloring on my eyes, and that is just kind of bringing more attention to my eyes, that can provide a little bit of balance. So in terms of eyeshadow, I might put on an eyeshadow that is more on the neutral side, and maybe a little bit of like a brown type of an eyeliner, or a brown or a black mascara, just to try to draw some attention to my eyes so that the lips are not the only thing that you see on my entire face. And in terms of blush, I think that I do want to wear some kind of a blush if you're wearing some kind of a red lipstick. But in a lot of cases, I think that a blush that is really neutral tends to work really well for me. Or if I am going to use a little bit more color on my cheeks and I'm wearing a red lipstick, then trying to match the color of the lipstick, or just using the lipstick as a little pop of color on my cheeks as well, tends to work out a lot better than trying to find a shade that is not really a good match, that is going to be too bright. And so now let's talk about the specific lipsticks that I have in my collection. And what I will do is start out with the most matte and the most saturated lipsticks, and the ones that I feel are the most difficult to wear. And then I will gradually work my way down to lipsticks that have a lot less pigment, and then finally to lip balms and lip oils and things that are just giving a little bit of a hint of red lipstick to my lips. And so therefore I'm going to start out by talking about really saturated lipsticks and matte lipsticks. And what I do tend to find is that if I do a YouTube search or a Google search, and I am trying to find out information on ways that people who are not used to wearing red lipstick can go ahead and try red lipstick, what it tends to do is to assume that you're going to be wearing these really matte shades and these really saturated shades, and that what you are going to be altering with regard to those shades is the particular color and the particular warm versus cool versus neutral version of it. And my experience, I think, and you can see what you think, is that this matters a lot less for me than it does for maybe some people, and that I can kind of get away with wearing any shade of lipstick sort of equally or almost equally, and that what really is difficult for me is just the fact that it's bold in general. I do think it's the case that things that lean to purple tend to be a little bit more difficult for me. And that is actually why I chose to wear the blouse that I did in this video footage, because it does have a little bit of that purplish red color in it. And so my feeling is that when I am wearing a lipstick that does have that berry type of a lean to it, that it kind of coordinates with that color in the shirt and makes it a little bit more wearable. And that is why I decided to wear this blouse that I'm wearing today as well, because I feel like this does have a bit of a reddish orange color to it, and that allowed me to wear this particular lipstick that I have on really much more easily than I otherwise would. And so that is one little trick, is that usually if you can find a way to tie in the red lipstick to really even a little bit of reddish color in your clothing and to have it match, that can look a lot more harmonious, even if it's not necessarily the best color for your complexion in and of itself. But in general, I do think that regardless of the undertone, if I choose a lipstick that is matte and that is really saturated, and I put this on right out of the bullet, that it doesn't really matter that much what the undertone is. I do feel like it just tends to carry me away. But one little other trick that I have been using is using a lip brush, and lip brushes don't seem to be something that are that popular in terms of what brush companies are using or what people are talking about or using. But I do think that if I am trying to use a lipstick that is too saturated for me, that using a lip brush to both line my lips and then to fill them in can help me to use a lot less pigment and have it look a lot more natural and to be a lot more wearable for me. And so that is something that I will be talking about in this video footage. And I also have been trying out some different lip brushes, and so I do have some thoughts about those as well that I can share with you. And then one more trick that I have developed for toning down lipstick that is way, way too bright for me is to be using just a little bit of a lip balm over the top of it that either has a bit of a brownish tinge to it or a blackish tinge to it. And there's one lipstick balm in particular that is from Saie that's called Vanity, that has just a little tiny bit of black in it. And I have found that to be quite effective at kind of grunging out some of the really, really bright lipsticks that I have tried and making them seem a lot more wearable for me. And then it's also the case that these lip balms that I put over the top of matte lipsticks can make the matte lipsticks a lot more comfortable to wear as well. And I do think that the Saie lipstick balms that I have used, those have been particularly good for me because those do seem to work for me over really any other kind of lip product that I might be wearing, and that they don't remove the color or sort of compete with it. They seem to be working with it really, really well. And so let's start out with talking about the Lisa Eldridge matte lipsticks, because those tend to have a reputation of being really bright but still being more wearable red colors. And so these lipsticks are called the True Velvets, and these are $36, and they do have a really matte and really pigmented finish. And in particular, Lisa Eldridge is really well known for a shade in that lipstick line that is called Velvet Ribbon. And this is a shade that supposedly everyone can wear, and it does seem to be pretty popular. And how she describes this is by saying that it is a classic pillar box red. And I wasn't sure what a pillar box was, and what I realized is that this is a red post office box that you can see on the streets in England. And so that made some sense to me. It's sort of just a really bright and kind of a primary color. And so because it is so bright, I decided to start off by applying it with the lip brush. And so the lip brush that I'm using in this video footage is from Ulta, and it is $10, and it is called the Ultra Precision Lip 188. And I do think that this goes on pretty nicely when I use the lip brush. I think that it works pretty well with the lip brush, and that I'm able to use this little brush as a lip liner to start out with, and then to kind of fill in my lips in a pretty quick way with this particular lipstick. And then after I did that, then I put on a little bit more of the lipstick, and to see how it looks if I put it on straight from the tube. Now I do think that when I put this on directly from the tube that it did look pretty bright. I don't know if you think that it looks too bright for me, but I do feel like it looks a lot brighter than most of the lip looks that I am used to wearing. And then the next lipstick that I'm putting on is another lipstick from Lisa Eldridge, and this is also one of her original red lipsticks, and it is called Velvet Jazz, and it is described as a muted, earthy brick red. And when I put it on straight from the tube, it does tend to get quite dark, and I guess that maybe that is how people used to wear lipstick during the jazz age, and that's why it's called Velvet Jazz, but it does feel a little bit darker than what I feel comfortable with, especially when it's right from the tube. And for this video footage, I am using my new Chanel lip brush, and so this is called Le Pinceau de Chanel. Pinceau means paintbrush, and this is $32, and it actually has two different tips on it. So one of these is a flat tip that you use to fill in your lips, so this is a bigger brush. And then there is also on the other end, there's a pointed brush, and so this is more designed for lip lining. And I would say that, it's not a cheap lip brush, but it's not outrageously expensive either. And I would say that maybe of all the lip brushes that I picked up, I'm really liking this Chanel one. Mostly because it has two different sides, but especially because it has these caps on the end. And so I can take it out with me and put it in my purse if I want to reapply the lipstick on the road, which I think is kind of important. I think most of the time that I'm wearing red lipstick, I'm going to be wearing it out, and so I probably will want to be able to reapply it, and so I think that this is a really good brush for that. And so far it's worked really nicely for me. And this is made in Japan, and supposedly it is a wood that is lacquered in terms of the actual material of the handle, and I think that so far it's worked really nicely for me. So I would be interested in finding out which of those you think is an easier going lipstick, because I think that one is quite bright and one is quite dark, and so those can both be a little bit difficult for people that have kind of a lighter and muted and sort of low contrast coloring, I think. And then the next lipstick is also in this True Velvet line, and this is called Velvet Enchantment. And it is described on the Lisa Eldridge website as being a soft rose red, or she says that it was like a storybook red, and that she developed this specifically for people who have a hard time wearing reds and feel like reds are too bright for them. And so I think that it does seem to be a little bit easier going for me. It doesn't seem to be leaning really strongly either warm or cool, and I think that in terms of the amount of pigment that is in it, I think there is still a lot of pigment in here. It definitely looks like I have tinted lips, but they don't seem to be as difficult for me to wear because of this shade. And so first I put on just this lipstick, and then I tried putting it on with the matching lip liner. And so that is a lip liner that is specifically designed to be exactly the same color as these lipsticks. And I think that typically I've used this a number of times in the video footage, and oftentimes people do ask me what lipstick I'm wearing if I don't make a note of that. And so I think that even on camera and also in real life, this is actually a lipstick that I seem to be able to wear a little bit more easily, because it's not quite so bright, it's not really dark, but it does give a sort of a more easygoing type of a red look. So I think that she kind of succeeded with that as far as I'm concerned. And so now let's move on to MAC and to a few more really, really popular and classic shades of lipstick. And so the first one is Ruby Woo. And Ruby Woo is a vivid blue red with a slight pink color. And that is supposed to be a lipstick that really anyone can wear. And so that is what the reputation is, and I feel like it is a quite bright lipstick for me. Now, traditionally, Ruby Woo was available just in a what's called a retro matte, and that was a really, really drying formula that I found to be almost impossible to wear, and that did seem to be really bad for my lips. But recently they came out with a line of lipsticks that is called the MACximal lipsticks, and these are actually really nice in terms of their being much more moisturizing to the lips and having just a little tiny bit of a gloss to them rather than a totally matte finish. And then another lipstick from MAC that I picked up in that same formula is this one, and this is this year's Viva Glam lipstick, or one of them, and it is called Heart. So Viva Glam is the line of MAC lipsticks where they donate every dollar that they take in to charitable organizations. And so I think that it's really kind of surprising that this is actually such a wearable shade. Of course, they're losing money on every one of these that they sell, but I think that this has actually been a really nice lipstick for me. And this has been described as an intense brownish blue-red color, and I think that this is actually fairly easily for me to wear, and I think it's probably because of that brownish color in it that mutes it out a little bit. And I am putting this on in the video footage with my Westman Atelier lip brush, and so I've had this for a couple of years, and I paid, let's see, originally $38 for it, and I think this has been really terrific. It has held up really well. It is supposed to go with their red lip palette, and so I'll show you that in a little bit, but I have found that using this just as a regular lip brush with really any of my brighter lipsticks, I think that this has been really nice, and it has held up pretty well. And again, this one is made in Japan, and the only unfortunate thing about this is that it doesn't have a cap on it, and so that makes it really almost impossible to use on the road. And because this one from Westman Atelier does not have a lid on it, I decided to pick up this lip brush from Farah Homidi, and this is a new luxury brand because it looks similar to the Westman Atelier one, but it does have this cap on it, and then you can take the cap off and put it on the end like this and make it into a full-size lip brush. And so I thought that I would give it a try, and unfortunately it's $58, so that was pretty expensive. And I've used it a few times, and I still feel like the bristles are sort of like going off in the wrong direction. And so I'm not sure that I like this brush nearly as much in terms of the general quality as the Westman Atelier brush or the Chanel brush. And then also in my collection, I have a few of the older matte formula from MAC, and I don't think that they're even offering those lipsticks anymore. I think that they got rid of all that old inventory and converted all of those colors to the MACximal line. But I did want to show you a couple of these colors that I happen to have in my collection that I haven't repurchased because I'm not sure they're the best colors for me. So in this old lipstick formula, I have first of all this color, which is Russian Red, and this is an intense bluish red with a slight brown undertone to it, and I think that it does look slightly less bright than the Ruby Woo lipstick, which tends to be a little bit more pink, but in general I think that this is a reasonably wearable formula for a red lipstick, but it certainly is very bright. And so this is a really classic shade that a lot of people do wear. And I would say that all of these MAC lipsticks, both the new MACximal lipsticks and the old ones, they do tend to stay on the lips for quite a long period of time. But I used to feel that with these matte lipsticks from MAC that I had to put down a lip primer first, like the MAC Prep Plus Prime product. Whereas with the new MACximal lipsticks, I think that they are staying on my lips just about as long, but they don't seem to need a primer, and they are really feeling really nice on my lip. And then another color that is available in the MACximal line that I have in the old formula is called Chili, and this is another really popular MAC color, and this is described as a warm brick red. And for the Russian Red lipstick, I am putting it on with a Sephora brush, and this is called the Pro Lip 85 brush, and it is $15. And I would say that this has a kind of a thinner and longer brush head to it. So if you compare this to the Westman Atelier brush, it's definitely a bit thinner. And then if we compare this to the Ulta brush, this is how the 3 brush heads look in comparison to one another. And I don't think this Sephora brush is bad for the price either. I think that has been fine, and then I'm happy to use that. But again, it doesn't have a lid on it, and so that does really limit the usage of it. And I also have another matte lipstick from MAC that is in another formula, and this is called the Powder Kiss Velvet Blur Slim Stick, and it is $28. And I have this one in a shade that is called Stay Curious, which is another pinky red shade. So I think that compared to the Ruby Woo shade, that this is a little bit more pink and not quite so red, but I think that it still on me does give off a pretty much of a red lipstick type of vibe. And I would say that in terms of the formula, this one actually does feel a bit more velvety. It feels a little bit more like the Lisa Eldridge lipsticks, whereas the MACximal ones, even though they are matte, they do seem to have just a little bit of a shininess to them. And then I have one more formula from MAC that is a matte lipstick, which is called their Powder Kiss lipstick, and that one is $27. And the shade that I have in this one is called Dubonnet Buzz, and it is described as a mid-tone wine. And so you can see, if you think that wine colors look good on me, I feel like I am comfortable wearing those a lot of the time in the winter because I seem to have a lot of clothing that is kind of burgundy. And so a lipstick like this one seems to tie in pretty well with those kinds of clothes. And in this footage, I am touching this up a little bit with the Westman Atelier lip brush. And then moving on to Nars. Nars makes a line of lipsticks that are called the Powermatte lipsticks. And they are $34, and so I do have a couple of different red shades in those. So the first one that I have is called Too Hot to Hold, and this one is described as a maple red. And so I think that this one is a fairly easy color for me to wear. And one thing that I'm finding in terms of looking at the video footage is that I think that it's easier for me to get a muted type of a look with these Powermatte lipsticks, and that even though they do have a pretty strong color, and even though it is pretty easy to build them up to being a lot of color, I feel like if I just put a fairly small amount of it on, that they do blend into my lips pretty easily, and they don't look quite as overwhelming as either those Lisa Eldridge lipsticks or the MAC lipsticks. I don't think that these work all that well with the brush. And I think that in the first one, I'm trying to put this on with the Westman Atelier lip brush. And I think that it's really pretty easy to just put a small amount of this on my lips and then just kind of blend it in, either by using the brush at that point or just by smushing it around on my lips. And I think that for these lipsticks, they do tend to be quite dry, and so a lot of people are not really crazy about them because of that drying aspect. But I think that for me, if I put on the MAC Plus Prime product first, that these seem to work really well for me, and that they still seem to last for quite a long period of time. But I do feel like I have to work with them a little bit if they are not going to be really drying for me. So I do feel like I need to put down a primer first, and then I generally think that they look better if I put some kind of a topper on them. And the lip product that I think is probably the best topper that I've found are the ones that are from Isamaya. And so in this case, I put down a product that is called Follower, which is described as a berry glaze, but seems to have a little tiny bit of brownishness to it. And so I think that that muted out this lipstick a little bit as well. And so I personally feel like once I put down this lipstick and got it all in place, I think that it looks fairly easygoing on me and that it's one that I can wear fairly well. And then the other shade of lipstick that I have is this one, which I just got in a little sample. And this one is called Dragon Girl. And when I first got this sample, I didn't expect to be able to wear it at all. But I feel like it actually looks fairly nice on me. And I think that it's pretty close to the Ruby Woo shade. In this case, I put on this particular product, and then I put another one of the Isamaya products over the top of it. And in this case, the one that I picked is called Retro Retrospective, which is called a Deep Purple Shimmer. And I think that putting this on over the top of this, that it did give me a look that was more cool than I often wear, but that I think is definitely wearable for me and that I do think is pretty. And then next we have the matte lipsticks from Merit. And these were released last year, and I think that in terms of comfort, that these are actually really, really comfortable lipsticks to wear. They tend to be really moisturizing, and I don't think that they necessarily hold up on my lips as long as some of these other lipsticks do, but I think in terms of the wearability factor and in terms of the attractiveness factor, these are really important characteristics, and that I have really enjoyed wearing them. So the first lipstick footage that I have is in the shade Power, and this one is described as a cool red. And then they also have what is described as a warm red, and this one is called Vermilion. And so I do have both of those. And then the next company is called Cheekbone, and this is a company that I actually have had some good experiences with and that I am kind of interested in doing a whole video on. So this is an indigenous company that is based in Canada, and so they do have a lot of shades that are a bit more bright than I would usually wear, but I have found that their products have been really good quality, and they are sold in Canada and Sephora, but not here in the US, or at least not yet. And so what I'm doing in the video footage is that I'm starting out by putting on their lip pencil, and this is in the shade True Red, which is a bold blue-red color that is $20. And then they also make a number of different bright colored lipsticks, so I have a couple of those. So the first one that I have is called Aki, which is supposed to be a classic blue-red, and I feel like that's a bit similar to the Ruby Woo lipstick. And so these are lipsticks that I think do tend to be sort of on the dry side, and so they do stay in place for a really long period of time, and the colors do tend to be pretty bright. But I also think that they're fairly wearable, and the ingredients tend to be pretty good, and I definitely am not finding really any of the products that I've tried from them so far to be irritating. So I've been happy about that. And then the next lipstick is from Charlotte Tilbury, and this is called Hollywood Vixen, and I just have a little sample that I happened to pick up, and so I thought that I would give that a try here in this video. And this is described as a classic bright blue-red for a Hollywood star pout. And so this lipstick is called Matte Revolution, and in theory it is supposed to be matte, but I always have felt like this is much more like a satin lipstick, and I think if you look at it in the video footage that it's really coming across a lot more with a bit of a sheen to it. And those lipsticks are $35, and I think that I really do like the way that they feel on my lips. They do have some vanillin in it, and I would prefer that they didn't have vanillin in them, but I feel like in terms of the way that this looks on my lips, I think it actually looks pretty nice, and the lipsticks certainly tend to perform well. And then the next product that I have is one from Dolce & Gabbana's new line, and this is part of their MACximal Matte line, and it is $45. The one that I picked up is called a Berry Toned Neutral Red. I feel like in the video footage when I put this on that it looks like it's going on with some difficulty, but I also feel like when I put these lipsticks on my lips that they do have the texture that allows me to smush my lips a little bit and have them even out really easily, or to use a lip brush on them. And I do really like the way that it feels on my lips after it actually gets on my lips. And I think that it has performed pretty well in terms of staying within my lip lines and looking nice on my lips. And it's called MACximal Matte, and I don't think that's a bad name for it. I think it's actually has been really a comfortable formula for me. And I feel like in terms of the shade that I picked out, this My 2505, I think that that's actually doesn't look too bad on me. I think that it's a little bit more muted than some of these other lipsticks, and so it's a little bit easier for me to wear even if I'm not putting it on with a lip liner. And I also have a couple of lip blurs from Saie, and these used to be available at Sephora, and now I think they're just available on the Saie website. And they are $24, and I think that these actually are quite comfortable lipsticks, and I don't think that they look bad on me, but they do tend to be a little bit messy. And since they all come in really bright colors, I think that that is a real downside for this particular line, that they do tend to not be providing you with a nice, neat lip line when you just put them on straight from the bullet. They do tend to get kind of on the messy side. So in the video footage, I am using the Westman Atelier lip brush to put them on, and I do think that they perform a bit better like that. And so the two shades that I have, the first one is called Classic, and that one is just a regular blue-red shade. And then the other one is called Pop, and this is described as a bright berry. And again, I think that berry shades tend to be a little bit difficult for me, but that if I wear them to tie in a little bit with my clothing, that they tend to be a little bit easier. And before I move on, let's talk a little bit about a couple of other lip brushes that I think might conceivably have some potential. So the first one is from BK Beauty, and this is the Angie Hot and Flashy A505 brush. And this one is actually designed to put on shimmer eyeshadow, but it also says in the copy, or I've read before, that this is also has potential being used as a lip brush. And so I already had this brush, and so I did give it a try. I do think it's kind of on the large side, so especially because I don't have very large lips, I don't think this is really a great brush to be a lip brush for me, especially in terms of lining my lips. But if my lips are a little bit bigger, maybe this would work a little bit better. Another brush that I just picked up on Amazon because it had pretty good reviews is this one that is called LYL Pro Gold. And so this is $7, and it has two different brushes actually. So one of them is a retractable brush, and it just pops up, and this has kind of a point on it, so you can use this as a liner. And then on the other hand, it has this cap on it, and this is a bit bigger of a brush, and I think that this one is more designed to fill in your lips. And this is one of the first brushes that I bought, and I actually did use it quite a bit, especially at the beginning. And I think that for the price of $7, it's actually not too bad. And then another brush that I've thought about buying quite a bit is the Lisa Eldridge number 20 lip brush. And this one is also from Japan, and it looks fairly similar to the Chanel brush, or maybe similar to the Westman Atelier brush. I think that it could be a really nice brush, but it is $45, which I think is an awfully lot of money. If it had a cap on it, then I would be a little bit more willing to spring for that. But as it is, I am feeling fairly confident in terms of the Chanel brush being working pretty well for me, and so I probably am going to put aside that Lisa Eldridge brush for the time being because it is kind of on the pricey side, but I'm sure that it's very nice. I have other brushes from her, and I have enjoyed the other brushes that I do have from her. And now let's move into a category that I actually feel much more comfortable with than I do with some of these matte red lipsticks, and these are lip crayons. And so these are lip crayons that tend to give kind of a matte look, but I feel like they are easier for me to work with because I can use them to draw on a fairly nice, neat line, and because I feel like the pigment tends to be a little bit more easygoing than with some of these super matte, super saturated lipsticks. And then in general, that they are really giving me a look that is somewhat bright, and that does look like I am wearing a bright lipstick, or if I choose a red shade, a bright red lipstick, but that also is looking kind of neat and a little bit more casual and a little bit more easygoing. And that it tends to be really, really quickly to apply, and that I don't need to worry too much about touch-ups because the lip pencils are so easy to put on. And so the lip pencils that I think I really like an awfully lot are the Nars Powermatte lip pencils. So I think that these are an awfully lot like the Nars Powermatte lipsticks, but they are a little bit more easygoing, so they're not quite as saturated. They're certainly not as dry, and they are $30, so they're a fairly reasonable price, and I feel like I can use these really, really easily. And so the shades that I have in this, I have one that is called Born to Be Wild, which is a brick red, which I think is a very easy shade for me to wear. And then there is one that I think is pretty similar, which is called Valkyrie. And that is described as a burnt coral red, so it might be a little bit deeper, but it's still sort of in the same ballpark. And there is one that is called a Dolce Vita, which is a dusty rose, but I feel like for someone with my coloring that, depending on what I'm wearing, this can actually come across as being a little bit on the muted red side, which I think is kind of nice. And then I have one that I managed to pick up, again, that I was a little bit afraid of, but that certainly has turned out to be one of my more wearable bright red lipsticks, and that one is called Cruella. And it is described as being a passionate scarlet red, and scarlet is described as a brilliant red. So it is supposed to be bright, but I feel like as lipsticks that are really bright go, that this is one that I feel like I can wear without it really, really carrying me away totally, and that it does stay in place really nicely. And although it doesn't stay on my lips quite as long as the Powermatte lipsticks, I do think that it stays in place quite well. And so I'm kind of impressed with that particular formula. And then last year, Pat McGrath came out with a line of lip pencils that I think are pretty similar to the Nars Powermatte lip pencils, and they are almost the same price. They're $29. And the one that I have that is approaching being a red lipstick, this one is called Flesh 3, and it is described as a warm mahogany that I think is kind of a brownish red with maybe just a tiny little bit of purple in it. And I do feel like this one has been really wearable for me. And if you are looking for a bright red lipstick, then they have one that I think is called Elson, which I think should be a really nice shade of red also. And so I think that of Pat McGrath's products, that these are actually very nice and kind of underestimated in the marketplace, I think. And then several years ago, Haus Labs came out with a line of what they call the Monster. And these are lip crayons, and they come in a variety of shades, and some of them are kind of more neutrals, and some of them are brights. And so I have a couple of these that are red, and I think that they perform fairly similarly to the Nars lipsticks. I think that they're not quite as matte, and that they do have a little bit more of a sheen to them, and I think that they do feel really good on my lips, and they are really easy to wear. And again, they're really easy to draw on a really nice, neat lip, which I think is kind of attractive, and makes me feel fairly comfortable if that's what I want to wear, is that color. And so the ones that I have, one is called Currant Matte, and that is described as a warm red brown. And then there is one that is called Scarlet Red, which they describe as a cool deep red. And I'm not sure that I find them all that different from one another, but I do think that they have been really, really easy for me to wear. And in general, I feel really pretty good generally across the board about the Haus Labs products. I think that they have been very good in terms of not irritating my skin, and these certainly have not been irritating. And in addition, they are tend to have ingredients in them that tend to be nourishing, and I think that's the case for these lip pencils too. I do think that they feel good on my lips and that I feel good about wearing them. And I think that in general these are pretty strongly underestimated in the marketplace, and especially since they are only $24, I think that that is a pretty good deal. And then from Credo, I also picked up another lip crayon. This one is from Iri Perez, and it is called Coco Crayon, and it is $27 and made in Italy. And this is in the shade Heart, and it is a pomegranate red. And I feel like, compared even to lipsticks that I tend to use, and certainly compared to the other lip crayons, that this one tends to be kind of on the messy side. And so I need to be really, really careful with it, and to maybe like smear it around with a lip brush, something like that, to keep it from being too messy on my lips. So this is not something that I would likely rebuy, even though the color is kind of pretty. And also, I'm not sure, though, that this heart color is the best one for me. I think it does tend to lean kind of cool and kind of pinky red. And so if that's what you're looking for, then that's great. But I think that on my skin, it's not necessarily the best match either. And now let's move into lipsticks that are still really, really saturated, but that do have a bit more of a satin feeling to them, and that does make them maybe a little bit more wearable. That used to be a really big difference between matte lipsticks and satin lipsticks in the past. Now I think that a lot of the matte lipsticks are a lot softer and more easygoing, but I still tend to prefer satin lipsticks most of the time. And so the first one that I have is actually one of my very favorite lipsticks of all time in terms of the formula, and this is what I have on today, and this one is from Isamaya. And this is in the shade that is called Cardinal, and it is kind of a medium neutral red. It leans just a tiny little bit orange, very, very slightly orange probably. And I feel like in terms of the formula that this is really a fantastic formula. And it's one that I have to be a little bit careful about because it does tend to be very, very saturated. And if you really put it on sort of, just put on a full layer, that it does tend to be really, really full color with one swipe. But that if I am using it with a lip brush or I'm being really cautious with it, and I'm wearing the right clothing with it or the right makeup, and my glasses, I think that this one goes on really well. And so that's what I'm wearing today, and so you can see how it's been holding up as I've been filming this video, and I can put on a little bit more of it just straight from the bullet, and we'll see how that works out. But in terms of comfort and in terms of how easily it goes on my lips, I think that this one is really fantastic. And it has some really nice ingredients in it. I always note that it has cherry oil in it, and that is a really expensive ingredient. And even though on the Sephora site and now on the Isamaya site that they are listing this as being the same formula as their regular lip balms, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that in the past, they have listed this as being a totally different ingredient list, and I think that this is still a totally different ingredient list. And that is what I really like about it, is that it is a really unusual ingredient list. And it doesn't have any flavoring in it, but I think that it does feel really good on my lips. And that even though this is a really bright lipstick, if I wear it all day, I think that my lips remain in really good shape. So I feel like this is a really hidden gem. I've actually seen almost no one review it except me, and so I'm hoping that more people will notice it, but it's kind of hidden because they just threw it in with all the rest of their lip balms, which are a totally different type of a product. Also a really nice product, but definitely different. And one thing that I did to mute this down is to put a little bit of this Vanity shade in their lip balm line over the top of it. And I do feel like this Vanity shade is really helpful for me for lipsticks that do tend to be a little bit too bright. And just putting a tiny little bit of that black layer over the top of them does tend to kind of mute them down and kind of grunge them out a little bit, and to make them feel like they're a little bit more modern, and certainly that they're a little bit easier for me to wear. And so I do like to do that with this particular lipstick, or with other lipsticks in my collection that tend to be a little too bright. But I would say that of all of the lipsticks in my collection that I could wear for this entire video while I'm filming it, I do really, really like this one an awfully lot. And I think this is a little bit on the sticky side, and so even though this goes on really, really bright, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't feel like it has smeared at all, and I think that it really stays in place, and that it kind of, even if I'm not wearing a lip liner with it, and I'm just using this to line my lips with the lip brush, I think that it stays in place really, really well, and I think that that's really important too. Now, another product from Pat McGrath that I think has been really overlooked are their SatinAllure lipsticks, and these are priced at $30, but you can often get them for like 20 or 30% off. So when that happens, it's a fairly good deal. And so these come in these small cases, and I think that that is one of the reasons that they have been overlooked, is because people don't feel like these cases are as nice as some of the previous cases. But in terms of the cost, they are reasonably priced, and in terms of the formula, I think this is quite a nice formula. and it doesn't have any flavoring in it, and I think it stays on my lips quite nice. And I think that this color, which is called Crimson Ecstasy, I think that this is a nice shade of red lipstick, and I don't have any problems wearing this at all in terms of how it's looking on my lips and in terms of it feeling good on my lips and not being too messy. I think all in all this is quite a good formula of lipstick, and that especially if you can get it on sale, it's actually quite a good value. And then the next lipstick that I have is from Victoria Beckham, and this is called Pop, and it is described as a cherry red. And what I felt like when I decided to purchase this one is that I know that Victoria Beckham very rarely wears red lipstick at all, and that what she typically does is to wear kind of a dark smoky eye and a more neutral lip. And based on that, I thought, well, maybe if she's offering a red lipstick that it would be something that was a little bit more muted and that I might be able to wear. And I think that there was some truth in that. And it is a fairly bright red, but I don't feel like it's super saturated, and so that makes it a little bit easier for me to wear. And I think that compared to some of these other lipsticks, that this one is a little bit more on the glossy side, and so that one could be attractive, and I think that it makes it a little bit more casual maybe. But I do like the way that these Victoria Beckham lipsticks feel and that they taste, and I've had them for 2 or 3 years now, and I feel like they've been holding up for me just fine, and so I've been really happy about that. And so in general, I do think that they are really good quality lipsticks. And then next we have one that is from Mob Beauty. And Mob Beauty, of course, is owned, and the formulator is Vic Casale, who originally created the Russian red lipstick and the Ruby Woo lipstick and many of the other classic lipstick shades for MAC. And so he does have one that is supposed to be in that vein in terms of the color in the matte lipstick line at that company, and that is just called M67, which is a red color. And in this case, I think that the real selling point for these lipsticks is that they don't include any plastics and they don't include any silicones. And so if that is something that you are interested in, either for health reasons or for environmental reasons, then that is pretty unusual for a lipstick not to have any of those types of ingredients in them. And I think that considering that these lipsticks perform pretty well, but they are not necessarily as well behaving in terms of staying on the lips and not getting a little bit messy as some of these others. And so that is why I ended up using a lip brush in the video footage. But I still do think all in all it's a fairly nice lipstick, and it certainly feels good on my lips. There is a little bit of vanillin in it, but they say that it is a natural vanillin. It doesn't come from petroleum, it comes from vanilla bean pods. And I think it tastes fine. I don't have any problem with the way that those taste at all. And then I also picked up a red lipstick from Fashion Fair, and this is a brand that is at Sephora, and I picked this up in the shade Catfight, which is described as a vivid red. And I felt like this should work for me. I do feel like, compared to really most of the other lipsticks that I have been using at this point, that one does tend to be a little bit difficult in terms of keeping it on my lips and not having it go outside my lip lines. I feel like I really definitely need to wear a brush with that one, and probably a lip liner with that one as well. And so I think that, considering that, the $29 price is a little bit on the high side, unfortunately. And then I also have a product from Westman Atelier, which is a lip palette. And so it comes in a little container that has 4 different shades. And it's supposed to come in one of their fancy plastic containers. But in this case, I just picked up this as a refill to try it out, and I realized that this cardboard container is actually kind of substantial, and that it seems to be perfectly fine to just use it in this cardboard container. And so that is what I have been doing. And so this is designed to go with their nice lip brush, and so the lip brush fits nicely into each of these 4 different stripes on here. And so there is one that is like a tomato red, there's one that's like a cool pink red, and then there is one that's supposed to be a deep brick red and a warm dusty rose. And even though these seem to be really, really bright shades, I feel like, especially if I'm using it with this lip brush, that it actually kind of works for me. And I do think that this is a really nice quality product in terms of how it feels on my lips and how it tastes on my lips. It has some cherry oil in it and some other ingredients that do make it very moisturizing. And in general, I do really kind of enjoy this product. It's just that it comes in a case like this. And I think that maybe now that I have my Chanel lip brush that I can take on the road with me, that this is something that I might actually carry around with me. So it's actually kind of a nice product in my opinion. But I do think that you really need to have a lip brush with a lid or that's retractable in order to use this effectively. And again, I do think it's an important thing to take a good look at your teeth when you are using a lipstick like this, because otherwise there is the potential for you to get a little smear of lipstick on your teeth and not really realize it and have it be really noticeable to other people. Now, unfortunately, this product is something like $85, so that puts it way out of reach for most people if you're going to be buying it with the case. And even the refill is $50, and so that is a pretty expensive product. But I think even if it weren't for the fact that those lipsticks tasted so problematic to me, I still think that this is a much better product than the lipsticks, because the lipsticks did seem to be quite dry to me and not to look very good on my lips, whereas this particular product, I think it actually looks quite nice on my lips, and they do feel nice on my lips. And in general, I think that having this color selection available to you all the time, I think that that's kind of a positive thing. And then one of my very favorite releases from all of last year were the Nars Explicit lipsticks. I think that these have performed really, really well for me in terms of all of the different shades that I have gotten, and I think that they all have been really, really easy to put on. They have looked really nice on my lips. I think that they've been really feeling good in terms of keeping my lips in nice shape. And I only have one shade from them that I think is even approaching being a red shade. So the one that I picked up is called Rendezvous, which is a mahogany red. And I think that that's actually a really nice shade. And I do feel like, especially for like the fall, that that's a very, very pretty shade. But in general, there are an awful lot of red shades that you could pick up. And so I think that these are definitely really quality formulas. And then I also have some lipsticks that are from MACximal, but these are the satin formula. And I think, if anything, these satin lipsticks are much better than the matte formulas and really among the best quality lipsticks in my collection. And unlike almost all of the other products that are from MAC, these are made in Italy, and I think that they really did get bang on in terms of creating a really, really wearable formula that looks really good and that works well with all of the existing MAC colors. And so far I have 3 of these in shades that are sort of a little bit reddish. And so one of these is Paramount, and this is described as a reddish brown. And the thing that I know about Paramount is that this is one of the shades of lipstick that Jennifer Aniston wore really frequently when she was playing Rachel on Friends. And so this kind of has a bit of a 90s vibe to it, and it is a little bit brownish, but I feel like this is a lipstick that I can wear pretty easily. And then another shade that tends to come up a lot when people talk about people who are soft autumns or soft summers and wearing a lipstick that looks like it's a red lipstick but without being too bright is one that is called Bricola. And Bricola is described as a warm, dusty rose, and I think that for a lot of people who have darker skin or who have a lot of contrast in their complexions, that this one would not look red at all. But when I have tried it, I kind of do agree that it does give kind of a reddish vibe on me, and I think that for people with even paler skin than I do, or that lean a little bit more pink, it might look even more reddish on them. And so I do kind of enjoy wearing this particular shade. I think it is one that I can wear like every day as a shade that I feel really comfortable with. And I actually have the lip liner for this one, and I have the regular lipstick. And so I have some footage here where I put it on with the lip liner first, and then I put it on just with the product. And I think that for people that are really kind of nervous about wearing a red lipstick, but that feel like their complexion is really very, very muted, that this one could be a surprisingly good starter. And then I also have one that I picked up that is called Creme in Your Coffee, and this one is described as a mid-tone pink brown. And so again, I think that for many people this would not look red at all, but that on me it sort of gives off a tiny little bit of that reddish type of a vibe too. And that is definitely a lipstick that I feel is really easy for me to wear on an everyday basis, and that just gives me a hint of having a brighter lipstick without it being something that's carrying away my whole look. And then the next lipsticks are from Armani, and these are called Lip Power Satin lipsticks, and they are $45. So these are pretty expensive, but I did manage to get a few of these on sale, and so I have a few different colors. I don't have their really bright lipsticks, but I do have some that I think might come across a little bit as reddish in the video footage and when I actually wear them. So the first one is 504 Flirt, which is a deep mauve pink. And then there is one that is 206 Cedar, and I'm not sure that one's still on the market anymore. That one definitely leans into kind of being an orangey brownish type of a color. And then there is one that is 202 Grazia, which is described as a brown rose. And I feel like when I wear those Armani lipsticks that they actually look nice on me, and that I find them to be quite wearable, and that they do feel good on my lips. There's no fragrance or anything like that in them, no flavoring. And I think that of all of the products that I've tried from Armani, these are definitely the ones that I like the most. I will say that when I look at them in the video footage, that they look a little bit more messy than some of the other lipsticks that I have been trying on in this footage. But I don't think that necessarily means that I want to stop wearing them. But I think that, you know, there's been an awfully lot of really good quality lipsticks that have come out over the past couple of years. And I think that these are still very nice lipsticks, but I'm not sure that they are worth that really high price compared to some of these others. But I do think that they are pretty colors nonetheless, and that they tend to have some colors that are a little bit more unusual that you may not be able to find elsewhere. And so if you can try them in Sephora and you've really fallen in love with one of those colors, then that might make it worthwhile. And then I have a lipstick from Makeup by Mario, which is called the Super Satin Lipstick, and that is $28. And that one does list fragrance on the ingredient list, but it seems like it is really just like a vanillin type flavor, and so sometimes I do wear this lipstick. And I do think that it looks nice on my lips, and I do think it feels nice on my lips. And the shade that I have in this one is called Dumbo, and I would not have really thought of this as being a red lipstick, but I did wear it in one of my videos, and someone said, "Oh, I really like that red lipstick that you were wearing. Which was it?" And I guess that it does look a little bit red on me, therefore. It is described as a spiced rose, though. And so now we're moving on to lipsticks that I think of as being a little bit more creamy and pretty good for the lips, and a little bit less saturated, but still giving a substantial amount of color. And so in this category, I think especially about the Lisa Eldridge Luxuriously Lucent lipsticks, and I think that these are actually really, really attractive to me personally in terms of how they feel on my lips, and in terms of their giving not too much pigment and not carrying away my look, but definitely giving a little bit of a statement. And so in terms of the shades here, we have a shade that is called Palazzo, which is called a deep neutral red. And I think this is supposed to be fairly similar in terms of the tone to the Velvet Enchantment lipstick, except that it might have a little bit more pigment to it, and it also has a little bit more of a shine to it. And then there is one that is called Spirited Away, which is described as a modern rosewood. And so this is a lipstick that is supposed to be not really signaling that it's a red lipstick, but it does have a little bit of a reddishness to it. So it does have spirit to it, she says. That's why she called it that. And then there is one that is called Wonder Wheel, and this one is described as a vibrant popsicle pink, but I think that it is such a vibrant color that it almost comes across as red, but it's fairly sheer. And I think this is supposed to be more like a summer color, and it's supposed to be really cheerful and fun and not too serious. And I do like that shade, even though it's a little bit brighter than what I usually might wear. And now let's talk about the Merit Signature Satin lipsticks. So the ones that approach being reddish, there's one that's called Cabo, which is supposed to be a soft red orange, and there's one that's called L'Avenue, which is a berry brown. And these are lipsticks, they list fragrance on the ingredient list, but when I asked them about it, they said that they were just raspberry seed oil, and I believe that. I think that they do taste really good to me. And they don't last forever. I would not probably plan to use them for more than a year or two, but I do think that they taste really good to me. They feel really good, and it's almost like wearing a lip balm, but that you do get a bit more color with them. And so I've been really enthusiastic about these. And then Jones Road has a line of what they call lip tints, which are kind of easygoing lipsticks. And the original shades were all in bright colors, and so there were a few shades that are designed to look like they are red lipsticks. So one is called Ruby, which is described as a vibrant red. And there is one called Merlot, which is a berry wine. And then there's one that's Black Cherry, which is a deep aubergine. And I think that these are really pretty colors, and I do think that they are really comfortable formulas, and in general I do really like this lipstick line. I think that when you get into these dark colors, again, that they start to be a little bit on the messy side, and so therefore I don't always have a really easy time putting this straight from the bullet onto my lips and calling it a day. I feel like I really either need to use a lip brush with these, or I need to be using some kind of a lip liner and then just putting this on as a very light layer over the top of it. So I do think they're nice products, and in terms of the other shades of these lip tints, I really, really like them. And I don't mind using these, but I do think that it requires a lip brush. And I would say that for the Black Cherry especially, that one seems to be really, really dark, much more so than I had imagined. And so therefore, I really do feel like I need to be really careful with that and not to put on too much. But what I will say about these Jones Road lipsticks is that actually once I get these on my lips and once I smear them around and they seem to be in place the way they're supposed to be, it does seem like it's a fairly easygoing look. And so I think that it, compared to some of the other lipsticks that I'm wearing, like for instance the one that I'm wearing today, I think that the amount of color that I can get on my lips, I can get on a lot less of it, but still have it be really attractive in terms of offering an obvious color, but one that's not carrying my look away. And so I do like that about them. But I also think it's fairly easy to build up to a brighter look if that's what you're looking for. And most of the time I don't feel like blotting lipsticks is something that I'm really that inclined to do, but with the case of these Jones Road lipsticks, I feel like they do tend to be a bit more creamy than a lot of the other lipsticks that I use, and so therefore that blotting can sometimes be helpful for those. And then another line of lipstick that I feel really, really enthusiastic about are the Legendary lipsticks from RMS. And so these were released fairly recently, and they are, again, in a formula that doesn't include any plastics and that doesn't include any silicones, and so I do feel really good about using them from that perspective. And they are the kind of lipsticks that click up and they don't click down, and the formula took me a little bit of time to get used to because it seems like it kind of goes on the lips kind of feeling cool and watery almost, and it does have a lot of cherry water in it as well as some cherry oil. And I think that this is a product that is actually really, really good for my lips, and I think it actually looks really nice on my lips, and I especially like it because I think it goes on like a regular lipstick, but that fairly soon it will blot down to a stain, and the stain does seem to last really long, and it actually is a really pretty stain. And so I find these to be super wearable, and I also like the way that they taste. They do have some real vanilla extract in them and a mix of herbs, and I'm not sure if everybody would like the herbs that are in these, but I find them to be really attractive. And so I've really enjoyed using them a lot in terms of how they've felt, in terms of how they've looked, and in terms of how they've tasted. And so the shades that I have in this that approach being a little bit on the reddish side, first of all, there's one that is in their nudes line, which is called Pamela, and this is described as a deeply seductive berry bitten nude. And then some of the other shades include Audrey, which is described as a rose mauve red in a neutral shade. And I think that that one is actually more like a reddish shade than really any of the others as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure why they're calling it a rose mauve red. And then there's one that is called Ruby Moon, and this one is supposed to be a warm shade, and it is described as a bright poppy red. And this is actually named after Rosemary Swift's dog. This is her favorite shade, this sort of orangey red, and so that Ruby Moon is her little cute dog. And then Monica is a deep berry red, and they say that one is a neutral. And then there is one that is called Mickey, which is a warm tawny brown that they are saying is a warm shade. And Melanie, which is a vibrant Tahitian coral, which they are saying is a warm shade. And then there was one that they released over the holidays as part of a kit, which is called Josephine, which is a burgundy shade. And I actually really like that one. And I think that that kit may still be available if you are still interested in that shade. So in general, of the lipsticks that are on the market, I actually feel really good about using these, and I tend to reach for them an awfully lot, especially just on an everyday sort of basis. And even though they are red lipsticks, I don't feel like they are red lipsticks that I hesitate to wear, regardless of what I'm doing, whereas a lot of these other lipsticks, I would really only wear them for special occasions. And then still another lipstick line from Nars that I really like is their Nars Afterglow Sensual Shine lipsticks. These are $32, and so these tend to be a little bit on the translucent side, and they tend to be quite shiny and very moisturizing, and they do feel good on my lips. And they don't have any lip plumping ingredients in them, and they don't have any added flavor in them, and I think that they taste really good to me, and that they do seem nourishing on my lips, and that they do look nice. And they do have some shades in them that do lean a little bit on the reddish side and that do give the look of having a red lip. And so the ones that I have in this, I have one that's called Aragon, which is described as a red chestnut. And then there's also one that's called Voltage, which is more of a vivid red, which is more like a classic red lip. And in general, I think that that is a nice product. And that if I'm looking for something that I feel is very wearable for me and very comfortable, that is one that I think is a red lipstick that feels really quite easy for me. And the good thing about these is that I think that they stay very nicely on my lips. And then another line of lipsticks that I think are among my favorite for kind of everyday wear are the Glossier Ultra Lips. And these are lipsticks that do feel really, really good on my lips. They taste really good to me. They are only $22, which is kind of a bargain compared to other lipsticks that are of similar quality. And they do come in a bunch of different shades. In terms of the shades that are reddish, I think that most of these tend to be pretty bright, probably brighter than many of these other lipsticks that are in the same category, or that I think of as being in the same category. So the newest one that they just released a month or two ago is called Flute, and this is a classic red, and I do think that it comes across as being quite red on the lips, even if I put just a little bit of a layer on it. But I also think it is an attractive color, and it does have that translucent base to it, and so that does make it a little bit more wearable for me, even though it does have a lot of pigment in it. And then second, there's one that is called Fête, which is supposed to be a watermelon red, so that one's a little bit more on the pinky red type of a shade. And then there also is one that I actually really like a lot, and that one is called Cranberry, and that is described as a crimson berry red. And I feel like the cranberry shade is actually quite quite nice and not too hard for me to wear. So I'm not sure why it is that that shade seems to be easier for me. But I do feel like I've gotten quite a bit of use out of that one since it was released a couple years ago. And then another lipstick that is quite glossy, but that also is quite bright in terms of the amount of pigment, is this new product from Violette FR, and this I have in the color called Pomme d'Amour, which is Love Apple. And I think that this is one that definitely has a real punch in terms of the amount of pigment. It actually is a lipstick that has a clear base on the outside of the stick, and then on the inside it has a core of pigment, so you do get quite a bit of pigment when you put this on. And I think that it does feel good on my lips, and I think that it's fairly moisturizing, and so it doesn't seem to be causing irritation. But it does contain quite a bit of ethyl vanillin in it. And so if you are a fan of ethyl vanillin, or artificial vanilla flavor, then you might like this one. I'm not all that much of a fan, and so that is one reason that I'm not all that inclined to wear this product. But I do think it's attractive. I think it does come across as a pretty bright shade, though. And then there's a company that is called Rowan. I haven't heard a lot about Rowan for a while. I think they do still sell at Credo. But they have a tinted oil balm, and this is $34, and it is available in the color Scarlet, which is supposed to be a berry color. And so I did pick this up a couple of years ago, and it's actually held up pretty well for me. It still tastes okay. It still seems to be going on my lips nicely, so that part is good. And in general, I think I was more impressed with it when it came out a few years ago. There's just been so many good lip products that have come out since then that it's not as impressive to me as it was at the time. But I still think it's a nice little product, and I do think it is good for my lips. And I think it tastes fine, and it doesn't have any synthetic fragrance in it or flavor. And I think that it's been very nice for me. And then LYS is a company that sells both through Credo and through Sephora, and so they are kind of leaning into the concept of clean beauty. And most of their products, including this particular lipstick, is made in Taiwan. And so this is actually a very small lipstick in terms of the amount of product that you get in here, which is why it is only $20. But in terms of the formula, I think this is a really terrific formula. I think that it looks nice on my lips. I think that it goes on very nicely, and it feels pretty good. And I think that this reddish brown color, I don't think that's a bad color for me. It is called Devoted. And so I feel good about this particular product. I think that even at $20, it's a little bit expensive on a per gram basis, but nonetheless, I think it is a quality product. And then a couple of years ago, when I first was trying to become comfortable with having a little bit of color on my lips, one of the first products that I actually tried out and really enjoyed were the Clinique Chubby Stick products. I think those are actually kind of nice, and I still kind of like them. Unfortunately, one of the colors that I liked was called Two Ton Tomato, and that one seems to be discontinued. There's one that I have here that is called Super Strawberry, which is more of like a pinky purpley type of a red that I think is kind of nice. And I think there's some other red colors also. And so I am not a Clinique fan really at all, but I do really still like this particular product, and I think it's a little bit unfortunate that most of the shades seem to be going away. And then I also have a crayon from Laura Mercier, and this one is called Chloe, and the shade is described as a warm red, and this one is $35, and I think it's been fine for me. I am not necessarily liking it as much as I've liked some of these other crayons, but I think that it's an attractive product and it's performed okay. And then a product that I think is a lot like the Nars Sensual Shine lip balms is the one from Hourglass, which is called the Phantom Lip Balm, and that one is kind of on the expensive side. It is $38. And I have that in two colors that are both leaning kind of red. One is called Thrill, which is a bright red, and one is called Impulse, which is a deep red. And I do really like the way that these look on my lips, and when I first put them on, I always feel like they are going on really nicely, and they have a little bit of a peppermint type of a flavor to them, which I find to be attractive. But I think, unfortunately, these are designed to be lip plumping, and they do tend to be really, really drying to my lips and to be kind of irritating to my lips. And so after I wear it, even put it on 1 or 2 times, I feel like my lips sort of turn into a mess, and I need to get out all of my super charged lip balms in order to bring them back into balance. And so therefore I've given up on wearing that product at all. I think it's just way too irritating for me. And now we're finally getting to the point where some of these lipsticks seem to be really, really easy for me to wear, and that I do really like them, but they are still looking like they're kind of a red lipstick. And so one that I really am surprised at how much I like every time I take this one out is called the Charlotte Tilbury Matte Revolution Walk of No Shame lipstick. And so this used to be called Walk of Shame, I think. And the idea with this one, I think, is that it is what your red lipstick looks like the morning after you were wearing it, if you didn't take it off. And so I do think that it looks really muted and really blotted, but I also think that it's kind of really attractive. And they are describing this as just a berry rose. But I feel like this is something that I can really just throw on, and even though this is not really my favorite lipstick formula, especially in terms of the fact that it includes vanillin, I really like this color so much that I end up reaching for it quite a bit. And then MAC has still another lipstick line, and this one has a couple of lipstick shades in it that I do think give that casual red vibe also. So this is their Luster Glass line, and so these are somewhat sheer and somewhat translucent lipsticks, but they have a moderate amount of pigment in them. And so one of these is called Business Casual, and it is described as a warm red nude. And then there is another one that is called Ladybug, and that one is described as a tomato red. And unlike many of the other products that I pick up that seem to have the same color, these seem to be much more wearable for me because they don't seem like they are quite as pigmented. And they also are pretty shiny, so that can be attractive to me also. And compared to a lot of the MAC lipsticks, especially the older ones, I do think that these still feel really good on my lips, and that they are moisturizing, and they do have some good quality oils in them. But unfortunately, they do have a good bit of vanillin in them, and so that is the one reason that I wouldn't wear these more often. And then a number of months ago, Lisa Eldridge came out with another new line of lipsticks, and this is called Baume Embrace. And these are lipsticks that are designed to be really, really nourishing for the lips and to have a lot of hydration and to be fairly translucent, but to have some pigment in them. And so there is one shade of those that is called Red Curve, and it is described as being a warm, bright red that is inspired by Ellsworth Kelly's distinctive use of red in his work. And it is $34. And I do like the way that that looks on me, and I do like the way that it feels. It does have quite a bit, again, of vanillin in it, and so that is something that makes me not want to use it as much as I otherwise would. But I think that other than that vanillin in it, I really do like that particular product, and that it does give me the look of a red lipstick, but one that I feel like is really wearable for me. And then another lipstick that also has an awfully lot of glossiness to it is the one from Sarah Creel. And so the shade that I have is called Vibrance, which is called a sheer rosy plum. And even though it is supposed to be a plum shade, I think that it gives me kind of the look of a cool red lipstick. And I do really like the way that it looks, and I feel like even though I don't necessarily do all that well when we lean into the purple or cool type shades, that this one is so translucent that I think it looks really nice. And so I would kind of like to see her release a few more shades in this, but in any case, I think the fact that it is really, really good for my lips and that it does look nice makes me really kind of want to use it and maybe to try another shade. And then another lipstick that I think is designed to look like a bright reddish type of a lipstick, but to be a little bit more muted, is one from Colfi. And this one is called the Heirloom Satin Lipstick, and the shade that I have is called First Sorry. And I think that the idea here is that this is the kind of lipstick that you might wear when you were a young girl. So that's what First Sorry would be, I guess, is when you're first reaching adulthood. And so I think that this is a very neutral, but I think that it is one that is gives me a little bit of the look of having a reddish lipstick, but that it is a little bit more on the muted side. And it is $30, and in terms of the formula, I think that it's not quite as moisturizing as some of these other lipsticks, but in terms of the look, I think that it's pretty attractive. It has a little bit of brownishness to it, and I'm not sure that, again, I do all that well with the berry shades, even if they are muted, but I think for people that do well with berry shades and that are looking for something that's really muted, I think this could be a really, really good choice. And the Chantecaille Lip Veils, these are lipsticks that I think are actually quite nice in terms of their being moisturizing. They are $55, so I think that that's really quite high in terms of the price. Everything from Chantecaille is really expensive, and this is no exception to that. But I think that this particular shade that I have, which is called Irish, that is called a Vibrant Sheer Raisin, I think this is kind of an unusual shade, and I do like the way that it looks, and I think it gives me a little bit of a look of having a lipstick that is sort of a cool red with a bit of brown in it, but it's muted, but I think that it does give a little bit of a sense of having a red lipstick. And so if that is the sort of color that you're looking for, I think this is a fairly unusual color that could be attractive. And now we are moving into some lip products that are a bit more sheer. So these are lip products that definitely have a distinctive red or reddish type color to them, but they also do not have quite as much pigment as many of the earlier lipsticks that I discussed, and therefore they can be a lot easier for me to wear. And so the first one of these is from Augustinus Bader, and these are their tinted lip balms, and they are $46, which is very, very expensive, but I actually do find that I really like these lip balms a lot. And I think that the reason for this is because they do include some of the proprietary peptide that is in all of the Augustinus Bader products. And so this is a peptide that I think has been effective for me in terms of it having a positive effect on my facial skin and the moisturizers that I have used. And a while back I did start to use their clear lip balm, and I did find that to be useful for my lips. And then later in the year, last year, they came out with these tinted versions, and so I decided to give those a try as well. And so my feeling with these lip products in general is that they do seem to have a positive effect on my lips in terms of making my lips feel less dry, even when I'm not putting this on all the time, and also in terms of helping my lips to be a bit more plump or maybe a bit more full, in terms of it being a lot better for me to just put on lipstick and have it not go outside my vermilion border. And so I've been really happy with it for that reason. And in general, I do think that this is just a good product for my lips. And the tinted versions are made in collaboration with Sofia Coppola, who is a movie director who apparently does like to wear a lot of red lipsticks. And so these are lip products that I think actually do look really, really nice on me. They do have a definite bit of color, but all three of these shades seem to be really wearable to me. And the shade 1 is described as a sheer deep pink, and so that one leans a little bit more into being a pinkish red. And then the second one is described as a bright red coral, and so that one is a bit more warm or a tiny little bit more orangish. And then the third one is burnt earthy plum, and so that one leans more into being purple or a little bit of a brownish purple. And despite the fact that I think these all do look a little bit different on my lips, I think that they all do give a really pretty color, and that they don't seem too overdone for me at all, so I can wear them sort of on a regular basis. And then another product that I really like and that I started to wear when I was still feeling really nervous about wearing anything that had very much pigment in it are the Tinted Daily Lip Balms from RMS. And so these are $26, and they come in a bunch of different shades, and most of them tend to be more on the pink side or not looking that red, but there are a couple of shades that I do think have a really distinctively reddish look to them. So the first one is called Crimson Lane, which is described as a sheer vibrant red, And then there is one that is called Twilight Lane, which is a sheer seductive deep berry. So that one is sort of a purpley red. And then there's one that's called Darling Lane, which is a sheer dusty rose with a hint of mauve. And that one, I wouldn't really describe it as being red, but I think that on some people it would look a little bit on the reddish side and give a hint of being a reddish type of a lipstick. And in general, I really like these products. They have worked out really well for me. They taste really good to me. They don't have any flavor in them, but they are not ones that have gone bad for me, and I've had these for 3 or 4 years in some cases, and they all seem to be holding up perfectly fine and not going rancid. And I think that they are offering some really nice moisturizing benefits to my lips. And they also are not giving my lips too much pigment, but they definitely give the look that I have sort of a finished look on. And so I would say that especially for people that are a little bit wary about wearing anything that's too bright, that these would be good products to think about. And then another product that also gives a slightly more distinct look of being a red lipstick are the Violette FR Bisou Balms. And these are $29, and I talked about these in my recent video on Violette FR. And these are lipsticks that are more on the matte side, and so they are definitely a little bit different than really almost all of the other lipsticks on the market that I would try and that I would be able to recommend. And so I have a couple of different colors of those. One that I have is called Amour Fou, which is Crazy Love, and this is a cool crimson red. And then I also have one that is called Susette, which is described as a cool raspberry pink, but I think that this actually is more like a pinkish red type of a color. And I do really like the way that these look on my lips. I do think that they give an attractive and kind of casual and blurry type of a look that is not really easy to duplicate in terms of other lipsticks. These do have vanillin in them, and I think the vanillin is pretty strong, so it's not so objectionable to me that I can't wear them, but I think this is the main reason that I don't wear them that much. And in addition, they do tend to be a bit drying on the lips. And then for some lip tints that are a little bit more on the glossy side, but still provide just a little bit of a hint of color, I do really like the Jones Rhode Lip and Cheek sticks, and these are $36. And they are really the one lip and cheek product that I actually would use on my lips as well as on my cheeks. Now, most of these do not really look very red at all on my lips, but there is one that I think looks a little bit on the reddish purple side, and that one is called Royal Plum, and it is described as a berry pink. And I do think that that has a really attractive look for me. And then for an affordable lip product that I think just gives a tiny little bit of a hint of color, I like the Honest Tinted Lip Balms, and these are $10, and there are a few shades that I do think lean a little bit into giving a reddish type look to the lips. So there is one that is called Plum Drop, which is a deep purple. There is one that is called Dragon Fruit, and this one is described as having a pop of fuchsia. And there is one that is called Blood Orange, and this is described as being a juicy red-orange tint. And I think that these are a nice formula, especially for the price. They do not have any extra added flavoring in them, but they do taste good to me. And I do think that they have held up pretty well for me in terms of not going rancid and continuing to be nice over a period of a few years for me. And then Lawless has a tinted lip balm line also, and these are $26, and I have a shade that is called Sugar Plum, which is described as a universal warm berry. I really haven't felt like this one has been as irritating to my lips as a lot of plumping products have been, so that part has been good for me. And in general, although this has a bit of a flavor in it, I haven't found this flavor to be objectionable. And I do like the way that this particular shade looks on my lips. It definitely is pretty sheer, but I think that the color that it puts on my lips has been really pretty. And the concept of that Lawless lipstick does remind me a bit of the Clinique Black Honey lipstick, and this is another one of those really sheer lipsticks that is not exactly a red color, but it gives just a hint of a reddishness, especially since it is so sheer on the lips. And I have continued to be a kind of a big fan of Black Honey, and I don't mind this formula too much, and I do think it tastes okay. And then Kosas has a line of what they call wet sticks, and so these are fairly fairly sheer tinted lipsticks, and I have kind of liked this formula, and I actually would use it a lot, except it does have some vanillin in it, and I don't think the vanillin is as strong in this product as it is in a lot of products, but that is the main reason that I don't use these much more often. And if I did like vanillin, I think that this would be a really good product. And these are $24, and they do come in a bunch of different shades, and I did look carefully because I was hoping to find something that was on the reddish side. And the closest one that I was able to find is one that is called Island High, and that is described as a warm toasty red, so it does look pretty brown, and of course it is very sheer, but I nonetheless think it is a pretty shade. And then next I'll talk about a few products that are potted products rather than in sticks, and so therefore they need to be put on either with a finger or with a lip brush. And so these are not necessarily my favorite products because I tend not to like using my fingers, and in the past I haven't had a good lip brush that has had a cap on it or that has been retractable. Now that I have that Chanel lip brush, I think that these might be a lot more wearable for me, and they might be a lot more fun to put on, and so I'm going to experiment a little bit more with these now that I do have that brush. And so the first one here is the Westman Atelier Lip Suede, and this is in the shade Les Nudes. So I talked before about the one that is called Les Rouges, which is very distinctively red. And then this one that is called Les Nude, this one has shades that are much more of sheer, and in some of these cases they are not reddish at all, but there is one shade in here that I do think is distinctively red. And so the shades that are in here, they are described as being warm rose, peony, cafe, and then mulled wine. And I think that the mulled wine is the one that is at the top that does give a reddish type look. And I do think that this is very pretty. And I do really like this formula, and so I have kind of enjoyed using this particular little compact. It's held up well to me. It tastes good, it feels good. I think it's been good for my lips, and it has held up well like most of the Westman Atelier products. I've had it for a few years and it has been fine so far. But it is very expensive, so you can get it for $50 in that cardboard case with the refill in it, or this case, which I have, which has it's refillable. This one is $85, so again, this is a quite expensive little product. And then RMS has a shade in their Lip2Cheek line that is called Beloved. And this is described as being a true red with just a hint of poppy to suit all skin tones. And so this is all natural and basically organic ingredients that are in little glass jars. And so this is a product that you can put on either with your fingers or with a brush. And it is supposed to be able to be used as a blush or as a lip product. And I do think that this works fairly well for me as a lip product or as a blush. I tend not to have used it that much as a lip product just because of the fact that, again, I don't really like putting on things with my fingers. But I think it's worked fairly well with regard to my lips and my cheeks. Other than that, and I do think it is a really pretty and wearable tone. And actually the whole trend of using red color as a blush, it seems to have stemmed from this product, which was released a number of years ago, but has become really trendy really recently. And so I do think this is a kind of a fun product to have on hand. And the only thing about that product is that it does cost $40, which I think is a little bit on the expensive side for that product. But if you can get it at a good sale price, then it may be worth it. And I actually do have a 20% off discount code that can be used at any time if there aren't any other discounts available. And then this past year, Merit released a new color of Flush Balm that is a red color, and this is called Rouge, and it is $30. And I always think of these Flush Balms as being primarily designed for the cheeks, but I feel like they do actually work relatively well for my lips also when I gave it a try in this video footage anyway. And I do think that this is a kind of a pretty color of red, and that it does work pretty easily, and it just gives a little bit of a hint of a reddish color on the lips. And in general, I do feel pretty good about almost all of the Merit products. And I think especially these Flush Balms have been very nice in terms of how easily they go on and in terms of their applicability, especially for the cheeks and also for the lips. They don't have any added flavor in them, and they have held up really well for me. I've had some of these almost since the company launched several years ago, and they all seem to be fine. And then Ritual de Fille has a line of products that are called the Color Nectar Pigment Balms, and these are $26. And these are little blush and lip products that are in a fairly translucent base, but they do have an awfully lot of pigment in them. So a little bit of that product goes a long way. And if you use it as a lip product, you can definitely get a kind of a sheer look to it, but you can build it up to looking like there's a lot of color pretty fast. And so the one that looks the most red is called Blood Flower, and that is described as being a cherry glaze. And then they have a couple of other shades that are also a little bit on the reddish side, including Hummingbird, which is described as a summer watermelon, and also Snapdragon, which is a juicy kumquat. And like almost all of the Ritual de Fille color products, these do have a lavender type of a scent in them, and so if you're not a lavender fan, then you may not like this one. And any lavender product always is a little bit startling for me when I put it on my lips, but I wouldn't say that it tastes bad, and I wouldn't say that it has been irritating at all. I think these have actually been kind of nice products for me. And now let's talk about lip pencils. And of course, lip pencils can be used to draw on a lip before putting on a regular lipstick, and I often do that. But in addition, I feel like lip pencils often are things that I like to use on their own with just a little bit of gloss or something on the top of them. And the reason for that, I think, is because for me, I feel like in a lot of cases I can get a look that is a little bit neater and a little bit less pigmented, and that I think is a lot less likely to go awry for me. And especially some of these lip pencils I think do work really, really well for that. So I think that my favorite lip pencils in general are the ones from Chanel. And so these are called Le Crayon Lèvres, and they are $35. And so that certainly is expensive for a lip pencil. But I think that as a special Chanel product, I think it's a price that I feel like is worth paying compared to what I would pay for one of the other lip pencils that I might choose to buy. Now there is a pencil from Chanel that is called, I think, Rouge Cerise, which would be a cherry red color, and I would be interested in getting that one, but the pencils that I have so far from Chanel are pencils that are a little bit more on other shades of red. So there is one that is called Rouge Intense, which is supposed to be an intense brick red, so it is a little bit orangish and a little bit on the brownish type of a side. And then there is also one that is called Rouge Brique, which is a little bit more like almost leaning into being a terracotta shade. And then there's also one that is called Water Rose, which is described as a warm rosewood. And I think that all three of these shades have been very nice for me and really wearable, and that I can wear them on their own with just a little bit of a tinted lip balm over the top of them, or some other kind of a lip glossy type of a product. And one additional thing that I do like about these Chanel lip pencils is that they are one of the few lip pencils in my collection that has a little brush on the end of this. And so if I don't have a lip brush with me, but I do have this pencil, then I can use this to put on lipstick along with this pencil. Or I can use it to feather out the edges of the lip pencil when I put it on to make it look a little bit less neat and a little bit more on the casual and messy side. And so I do like that a little bit too, and I think that as brushes that are just attached to the pencil go, this is actually a pretty nice brush. And then one that I have that is more like a cherry red is from Victoria Beckham, and this is their lip definer line, and this product is $32. And the name of the color that I have is just called Red, and it is described as a true red, and I do think that it is kind of a neutral red, and that it's not really too warm and it's not really too cool. And in general, I do think this is also a very nice product. I think I don't like it quite as much as the Chanel products, and it doesn't have a brush on it, but I do think that it has worked really well for me, and that I can wear it pretty well either as a starter to put on other lipsticks, or else on its own with just a little bit of gloss on it. And then MAC is actually one of my favorite lip pencil formulas, and they certainly have a really, really wide range of colors. And I think that some of the colors that they offer are particularly unique. And in the red line, there's been a couple of colors that I do think have been very nice. So one of these is called Cherry, and this is described as a vivid, bright bluish red. And so I am demonstrating that with a little bit of a product by Jane Iredale over the top of it. And this Jane Iredale product, it is what is called a lip glaze, and it is the Color Luxe lip glaze in the color Siren, which is described as a vibrant red. And so I do like the color of this particular lip pencil. And in terms of that Jane Iredale product, I do think that it's been okay for me. It is really, really bright. And so therefore I tend not to put this on over my whole lips because it can get a little bit on the messy side if I do that. So I tend to use just a little bit of a dab of it, maybe over a lip pencil like this one. And I think it behaves a little bit better when I do it that way. And then the other color that I have that looks reddish on my lips, in my opinion, is the one that is Bricola. So I talked about that earlier in the satin lipstick section, but I think that this particular pencil also works well on its own with maybe a little bit of a gloss over it. And so in this case, I put the Isamaya Vanity Lip Balm over the top of it, and that is a black lip balm that is just very, very faintly tinted to be black. So it kind of dulls it out a little bit, and it makes it into a color that's more like, I don't know what color this is, but with a little bit of a reddish vibe to it, in my opinion. And then another lip pencil that was released just last year are the ones from Glossier, and these are called the Lip LIne pencils, and these are $18, so they are a fairly good price. And so I have a couple of shades in this pencil that I think do lean a little bit into being red. And so one is called Black Cherry, and this is a shade that I especially like. And it just came out, I think, a couple of months ago. And it has been really out of stock most of the time on the Sephora site and on the Glossier site, but I happened to find it in my local Sephora. And I do really, really like this shade. And so this is described as a deep burgundy red, or I think of it as being sort of a cherry cola type of a red. And I really do like the way that this looks on my lips, and I am hoping that they are going to be keeping this as part of their permanent line because I do think it is a really, really good color. And then the other shade from them that I have that seems kind of reddish to me is in the shade called Bit, and that one is described as being a warm mauve. And in general, I think that these pencils perform almost as well as those Chanel pencils, and I have really liked them an awfully lot. And then I talked earlier in this video in the lipstick section about Cheekbone, and about Cheekbone being a brand that I think is kind of an up-and-coming brand. And so I also have liked their lip pencil, and I have this in the shade that is called True Red, which is just described as a bold blue red. And I do think that this has provided me with the look of a nice red lip without it looking quite as overwhelming as their lipsticks tend to do. And then because I happen to have it, I will show you the Hotliner from Kosas, and this is a lip liner that was released last year, and it is priced at $22. And my experience with these Kosas lip liners is that all of them look different when I first swatch them on my hand or when I first put them on my lips, but then within a period of a couple of minutes, they all disappear and they all look basically the same and like kind of a grungy, washed out brown color. So I'm not really enthusiastic about that. Now this red lip pencil, this one does tend to stay a red color, so that part is a little bit different. And it is described as being a vibrant cherry red. The shade name is Extra, but I feel like this one is really not performed as well in terms of going on my lips smoothly and in terms of spreading out as smoothly as a lot of the other lip pencils that I have really liked. And so I really haven't gotten much use out of this, and I definitely would not buy this again. And then for the sake of showing a little bit of color variety, I have one from Clinique, and this is in their line that is called Quick Liner for Lips Intense, and this is in the shade of Intense Cayenne, and so it has a little bit more of an orangish type of a tinge to it. And I think that this is not a bad product, especially for since it's one that you twist up, and so you don't have to sharpen it, and so that can be a little bit more convenient. And I think it's worked out okay for me, and compared to my experiences with a lot of Clinique products, I think it's not been so bad. And then I have one lip liner from Dior, and this is the same price as the Chanel lip liner, $35. It's called the Dior Rouge Contour, and it actually has an ingredient list that made me think that it was going to be similar to the Chanel product, and it actually looks fairly similar in terms of it having a brush on one end of it, and I think that the brush has been okay for me. But I haven't really been very happy with how this pencil has performed for me. I don't think that it has gone on all that smoothly, and I've had a little bit of difficulty in making it into a lip line that would either be a good lip liner for me, and it also doesn't seem to work all that well in terms of spreading it out over my entire lips, and it has irritated my lips a bit. And the color that I have is called Verone, and then I put a little bit of the Haus Labs lip glaze on the top of it, and that is in the color Fig, and I do like that color in the Haus Labs product, and I think the color of this one is actually attractive as well. I just haven't been very crazy about the formula. And speaking of liquid lip balms, here are a few more that have a little bit of a reddish tinge to them. So the first one is from Ritual de Fille, and this one is called Thornbite, and it is $27. And so the shade that I have is called Rosebite, which is supposed to be a sheer rose red. And in terms of the color and how this performs in terms of it going on my lips, I actually do really like it. But in general, I haven't used this at all, and the reason for that is because I'm not really crazy about the flavor of this one. So it is supposed to be plumping, and so I don't feel like it is really irritating exactly for my lips, but it has a lot of ginger root oil in it, and I am not real crazy about that particular herbal ingredient. And then a product line that has been super, super popular over the past couple years have been the Summer Fridays Lip Butter Balms for $24. And they have a shade that is called Cherry, which is supposed to be a sheer cherry red. And so in my quest to find sheer red lipsticks, I did pick this up. And what I feel like is that it does have quite a bit of pigment in it, and I think that that is okay, but it's a little bit on the messy side, I think. The other thing about these Summer Fridays products is that they do have a fairly distinct taste to them, and each of the flavors has its own taste. In this case, the flavor seems to be more of a vanilla type flavor, and so I don't find that as objectionable as some of the other ones that have synthetic fragrance in them, but nonetheless, it's really not my favorite flavor either. But I do really like the texture of this particular line of products, and I do think it's moisturizing, so I can see why it has been really popular from that aspect. And then Robe does have a line of lip balms that are a little bit similar, and these are called peptide lip tints, and most of these do not have any kind of a flavor in them, and I do like the way that they smell and that they taste, and I do think that they've been good for my lips. And the shade in this that is, I think, the closest to being a reddish shade is called Raspberry Jelly. And so that one does lean more into being a purpley type of a shade, but I think that it is so sheer that it does give a little bit of a reddish type of a vibe. And these are $18, so I think that they are a pretty good deal. And then Tower 28 also has a product line that is similar to these others. And this is called the Lip Softie, and it is $16, so it's a little bit more of a value type of a product. And the shade that I have in this one that I think leans a little bit into being a reddish shade is called Ube Vanilla, and this is described as a sheer burgundy. And I do like the way that this looks on my lips. I do think it's a pretty color, and I think it functions fairly well in terms of the amount of pigment and the formula. I don't think it's really messy, but this one does have a flavor in it. Now, all of these are supposed to be food grade flavors, but that doesn't mean that they are not synthetic. And in this case, I think that this flavor is just a vanilla type of a flavor, and I haven't found it to be impossible for me to use, but it's also not one that I feel really attracted to using, so I really haven't worn this all that much. And now finally, let's talk about lip oils that have a little bit of a red color to them. And so one that I especially like, and that is actually one of my favorite lip products of all right now, are the RMS Legendary Lip Oils. And so these come in, I think, 8 different shades, and 3 of these are shades that actually do have a red color or a reddish color to them. And so the first one is called Lily, and this is described as being a sour cherry red. And so that one gives the most look of having a true red lipstick. And then there is one that is called Alessandra, which is described as being a bright pop of boysenberry. And then there is also one that is called Milla, which is described as a deep sugary plum. And I do think that all of those are really pretty, and I really like these in terms of how they feel on my lips. I think that the ingredient quality is really good. They actually have some cherry oil in them, which is something that I always think is a plus when it comes to any kind of lip products. And in general, I do think that these have been really, really nice for my lips, that they have been a positive in terms of how my lips have felt, and something that I want to wear every day whenever my lips are not in really great shape. They do have a little bit of a vanilla scent, but it actually is real vanilla, and I actually feel like it tastes okay to me. And it does have a few other kind of like herbal extracts in it that I also think give it a little bit of a taste. And this is a taste that I actually find to be a positive, but not everyone might like it, possibly. And then another product line that I really have liked pretty much across the board is Typology. And I think that one of the best products they have are their lip oils. And so these are lip oils. They come in a little bottle that is like a nail polish bottle. So it has a whole lot of product in it compared to the amount of product that is in a lot of other companies' products. And so even though these are $30, I think that they're actually a fairly good deal for the amount of product that you get, and I really, really do like this formula in terms of how moisturizing it has been for my lips, and in terms of how it has looked on my lips, and how it feels, and it tastes fine to me. And so one of the shades in the Typology lip oil is called Ruby Red, and this is described as being an intense red, flattering, and timeless, and I do think that that has been quite wearable for me. And then in addition to their lip glazes, Haus Labs has a line of products that are called the PhD Hybrid Lip Oil, and these are $26. And so the one that I have from them is called Primary, and it is described as a sheer cherry. And so I think that this looks okay on my lips. I'm not that crazy about how it feels. I'm not sure that it really feels that good or to my lips, and I'm not quite sure why, but I haven't been all that inclined to wear this product. And then I have a similar product that is from Armani, and this is called the Prismaglass Lip Gloss, and it is $38, so it is quite expensive. It doesn't have any flavor in it, so I feel like that is a good thing. And I haven't really felt like I objected to wearing it, but then I haven't reached for this one very much either. And this is described as being a cherry glaze, which is a sheer poppy red. And then finally, I have this product from Merit, and this is described as being maraschino, which is a sheer red color, and I don't think it shows up all that much on my lips when I just put it on, but I will put on just a little bit of it on top of the lipstick that I am already wearing. And I do like the extent to which this has a kind of a glossy feeling to it, and so I think it does work pretty well over other kinds of lipsticks, especially ones that have a reddish color to them. And so thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And fortunately for all of us, Coco is still with us. He had a really big week last week because he decided that even though he is only 20 pounds, he was going to run like 50 yards outside of our house to go chase a coyote. And he got bit on the butt. And he had a little bit of a touch and go period for last week, but he has survived just fine and is back to his old self. So we're going to have to be a lot more careful in the future. I didn't realize he was quite so brave about protecting our house from those coyotes. So anyway, if you have any suggestions in terms of lipsticks that I have not tried that you think might be good ones for me to try, then please do let me know about that in the comments section. And I would be interested in what your favorite lipsticks have been and if you have had success in wearing red lipsticks yourself. And in addition, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, then I hope you will go ahead and do that. And if you if you like this video, then I hope you will go ahead and click like. And so thank you very much for watching, and Coco and I love you very much, and I hope you are having a good spring. Goodbye.